Without further ado, so the Teacher Education and EAP SIG, or TED EAP SIG, set up to uh, provide a space for us to talk about approaches to teacher development, both self-directed individual and at organizational level. Obviously, that includes thinking about the teacher knowledge base, what's important, what is it we need to develop in. And as learners are the heart of our practice, really delighted to have Dr. Clare Watson speak for us. Clare is an old colleague of ours, and although the SIG is global, um, she's kind of metaphorically about 10 meters from your old office, Clare. Okay. Claire's going to talk to us today about implications for EAP teachers of Chinese EA Chinese students, conceptualizations of EAP, although Clare will explain this in much more eloquently and in more detail, but I'm just going to pass over to you, Clare. Thank you very much for giving this talk today.
Thank you, Carol. And I'm not sure it'll be eloquent, but I'll certainly try my best. So can you hear me properly? Loud and clear?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yep, loud and clear. I do want to say, Carol, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this today, because it's actually the first time I've actually had a formal opportunity to talk about sort of minor details about my thesis and to share some of the implications for teachers. So I'm very grateful and also happy to see some of my old colleagues on the call from around the globe. So let's have a look at the title. It's Implications for Teachers. I'm thinking it's more recommendations than implications, but obviously it's going to be twofold. And how Chinese students understand and make meaning of EAP. I do want to say at this moment in time that I think having everybody on this call means that EAP, the EAP community already care, I believe, about every single student that we teach. And the end game of this really will be to reach out there to the wider academic communities within the universities, but I'm hoping you can perhaps help me do that. So let me just show you the outline of what I'll talk about. Now, in order to talk about the recommendations and implications, I've got to obviously give you a little bit of detail about what the dissertation, what the thesis actually covered. I've had a few sleepless nights because when I was trying to put this together, I'm obviously trying to put the whole of the theses in there, and that's absolutely impossible. So, you know, it's been kind of, what do I want you to be able to get from this? Obviously, I can't give you the whole of the detail. You can read the theses if you want to look at things further. What I would also point out that the aim here is for raising an understanding of Chinese students in a teaching and learning context. I'm not necessarily here to give complete practical solutions. I'm hoping, again, as EAP practitioners, that we can all work together and try and see how we can sort of extend this, if you like. So I'll have a look at the study, the motivation behind the study, give you some brief contextualization, and most importantly, I'll go through the findings and the recommendations. So the study itself, the research question was, how is an AES module delivered in a UK higher education setting understood and experienced by Chinese students? The participants were 6 Chinese students, all studying international year 2 level at a Scottish International Study Centre. You may guess it was Aberdeen because that's where I'm based. Now, the AES module, I would probably say, mirrors more an EAP pre-sessional programme, apart from the differences that this is part-time and obviously those pre-sessionals are full-time. It's a 5 contact hours per week, totaling 140 hours over 3 terms. And it follows an English for general academic purposes approach. And the mastering, the creation of this has been influenced by university EAP programs. The participants were aged between 18 and 22, and their English language level was at least a B2 plus on the CEFR scale. I obviously needed to make sure, because the actual methodology included interviews with participants, that they felt confident enough to be able to talk in the English language. And also I was trying to avoid any sort of messy scenario at the transcription stage. Methodology was narrative inquiry, And I was basically looking at an analysis of stories told by participants, and I'll explain why shortly. The analysis was inductive, reflexive, thematic analysis, and complemented by narrative analysis. So let me give you the motivation first of all, and I think that this may well resonate with many of my colleagues around the world. For me, I have professional experience in EAP and also working with Chinese students. I've managed EAP programs, contributed to the creation of EAP programs. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of the call, I was actually mentored by a number of colleagues from the University of Glasgow who really gave me a very good grounding about what EAP means to all of us. However, throughout this and doing this in different countries, I've always encountered tensions and anxieties. And when it came to doing the doctorate, I was learning lots of other things. And then I was thinking, right, I've got these tensions and anxieties. What can I do to unravel them, which was the main motivation. I've always been very curious to explore how Chinese students understand and make meaning of EAP. I've always thought, this is what I think of it, this is what a colleague might think of it. What do Chinese students in particular actually think about it? Are they having a positive experience, etc., etc.? Now, at the crux of all of this is, again, my thoughts around how we develop and deliver EAP programs, or in fact, many programs within our university contexts, within a consumer-led education environment. We are providing Chinese students with pre-university EAP study or potentially in-sessional university study while they're already on an undergraduate or postgraduate course. Is it of intrinsic benefit to these students, or are they mainly thinking about it as a qualification purpose? They get the qualification, they move on, they move quickly, and they may go back to China or somewhere else. What have they gained from this experience? And for me, this is the principal importance to the preservation of my professional values. I will mention at this stage, particularly the context I'm working in at the moment. I'm heavily involved in conversations around the recruitment of Chinese students. And in fact, there's almost an obsession about how many Chinese students can we have? Can we compete with this university or that one? Do we have enough students coming through from China? Are they deciding to go to Malaysia, Australia, or where? And I just feel that there's an absence of, all right, we may be treating a particular international student population as cattle potentially. I want to know, what are we doing and how are they feeling once they're here? So this is the core of the study. I believe, as I believe you all will also believe, that we do need to respect, nurture and value our Chinese students, along with all students, in their quest to develop and grow through the experience of being here. So that's the motivation. I do have quite a few slides here, but obviously I'll try to just use them as prompts, and then we will open up the floor later to see whether or not you have any questions. So just to, again, talk a little bit about the contextualization, because if not, this doesn't make any sense at all. I can't go into all of these things in detail, otherwise we could be here until midnight. So within the theses, I really looked, and this is kind of what got me started, at globalization and neoliberalism, which I know lots of you are probably already writing about this, and the positioning of UK HE in this globalized arena. It covers human capital theory, and very much kind of thinking about the self-investment in education. Where does that take us? What do we get from that? Also the knowledge economy in the university, new public management, and the purpose of education. And again, you know, I could talk about all of these things because I think they're all equally fascinating, but we don't have time to look at that. But the crux of this is really, you know, are we preparing students for the workforce? And if so, do they get the intrinsic benefit, and so on and so forth? Purpose of education. We all, I imagine, think about this very differently, but for me, I very much drew upon the likes of Dewey, Nussbaum, Giroux, Freire, and really looked at that sort of education for individual growth, and that they can flourish within societies, etc., etc. But hopefully, I think we've all got that philosophy. Then we looked at, or I looked at, existing tensions, common perceptions and justifications within that sort of Chinese student within a UK HE context. And then I drew upon Chinese cultural, social and historical considerations, and in particular looked at recent Chinese education reforms. And again, we'll look at that a little bit later. And of course, it wouldn't have been a study without having a discussion around EAP, looking at the background, purposes and approaches. And obviously I needed to look at genre analysis, ACLITs, critical EAP and so on and so forth. A bit of an introduction to it. And I'm also aware that across the university sector, there will be significant variations in how people approach EAP. And I think there will be people out there, and I know there are people out there already doing significant amounts of research and a lot of work around this. And we just need to continue to think, how can we make things better?